The 1973 Yom Kippur War Committee. The 1973 Yom Kippur War between Israel and the Arab coalition of Egypt and Syria is one of the most crucial in the Middle East history. While being militarily focused, the war posed the vital lessons about diplomacy, military strategy, intelligence, and the pursuit of peace. Attention to these lessons provides valuable lessons and regarding conflict resolution, crisis management, and the balance between military power and the diplomacy in the contemporary international order. The danger of strategic surprise. The Yom Kippur War revealed the danger of strategic surprise since Israel was surprised despite the warning signals of the intermittent war. This showcased the necessity for intelligence exchanges, early warning, and the strategic perceptions. The failure to anticipate the scale and timing of the coordinated attack by Egypt and Syria demonstrated that no action can afford the treat of the sudden. Aggressive action in unsettled regions. The military preparedness and versatility rates. The war also illustrated the importance of military preparedness and versatility. Israel was taken aback initially, but through versatility and quick reinforcement capability, it was able to find its footing again and establish military dominance. Egypt and Syria's initial military victory, however, revealed the importance of maintaining momentum and aiming for sustained strategic goals. While such an early period of difficulty is compared to how the American Revolution began, Israel's ability to react and adapt was one of the elements that eventually contributed to their success.
The limits of military force and the role of diplomacy. While Israel's eventual victory on the battlefield, the war reminded us of a valuable lesson about the limitations of military power. The massive material and human expense of the war demonstrated that although battles must be won, they do not necessarily mean peace. The war itself sowed the seeds that would eventually find fruition in the Camp David Accords of 1978, in which Egypt and Israel began a diplomatic effort that concluded in peace. This proved that even after intense combat, the greatest challenge is to achieve peace through diplomacy rather than military victories. The role of multilateral diplomacy and external intervention. The Yom Kippur War also highlighted the significant role of outside powers to facilitate reconciliation. Despite the Cold War context, where the Soviet Union sided with the Arab nations and the US with Israel, both superpowers were instrumental in shaping the post-war diplomatic landscape. Their intervention, especially in the post-war era, had a pivotal role in forcing peace talks. The war thus demonstrated multilateral diplomacy and foreign pressure effective in inducing dialogue and laying conditions for peace. The symbolic power and identity in conflict resolution. The other key lesson from the Yom Kippur War was the power of symbolic action to terminate conflict. The fact that the Egyptians were willing to meet Israel in peace negotiations and that Israel returned to the Sinai Peninsula were not just territorial concessions, that they were huge symbolic gestures of reconciliation. The conflict proved that it is typically possible to address symbolic dimensions of a conflict, such as national pride, identity, and history of grievances, in order to overcome enmity.
The need for a comprehensive peace framework. The Yom Kippur War also learned us that there has to be an integrated peace structure that does not merely encompass security. The post-war Camp David Accords did not merely deal with territorial matters, but even the economic and social concerns that can contribute to peace that lasts. The agreement created frameworks for future cooperation, ensuring long-term stability by incorporating, among other aspects, military security, but even economic cooperation and mutual benefits. The road to peace. The Yom Kippur War is still an evidence of how military might, although indispensable in the achievement of tactical triumphs, is most often insufficient in achieving lasting peace. The war and its lessons taught humanity that diplomacy, visionary strategy, adaptability, focus on symbolic deeds, and multi-pronged peace approaches, which take into account security, identity, and post-war reconstruction, are requirements for ending war and enjoying lasting peace. Ultimately, the Yom Kippur War is an illustration of how military conflict can result in life-changing peace negotiations if the greatest lessons of diplomacy, negotiation, and complete conflict resolutions are learned.
Tension has occurred in the Middle East between Egypt, Syria, and Israel. Efforts of the United Nations and other international actors to achieve peace in the Middle East failed. Sustainability of Israel's security strategies and territorial expansion policies and the threat it faced. Opposing interests in the Middle East has been the cause of the conflict. Interests and policies of the Soviet Union and the United States in the Middle East. Arms race and military preparedness in the Middle East play a role in increasing the tension. The lack of effectiveness of the previous resolution created by the United Nations, Resolution 242, caused stress in the Arab nations and Israel. The current situation is the countries in the Middle East are concerned about the tension among Israel, Egypt, and Syria over the disputes for the lands occupied during the Six-Day War. Egypt demands in the Sinai Peninsula and Syria demands Golan Heights without offering anything in return. They have not changed the stance they have for the 2042 resolution. USSR is looking to expand the areas of the Cold War, while USA and the NATO are offering to demilitarize the region. Israel was getting aid from the USA and Soviets were backing the Arabs. The helping of the Soviets are so significant for the Arabs since they have lost many wars against Israel. NATO CAPS has naturally collaborated with all other nations in order to de-escalate the situation and had been the bridge between the opposing countries. Human rights is Israel will recognize the Palestinian people and their rights after the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the Sinai Peninsula and Golan Heights to protect the local population of the areas. Israeli citizens who begin to live these two regions will return to Israel.
Agreements. Non-recognition of Israel. Israel, Egypt, and Syria have come together to discuss the rising tensions between the sides. They have come to presumption that Egypt and Syria will recognize the state of Israel as a sovereign state in exchange for Israel giving back the lands that were taken in Six-Day War, specifically the Golan Heights and Sinai Peninsula. According to the agreement, Israel will recognize the rights of the Palestinian people living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip as long as the people are living under its territory. To assure the security of the borders and to prevent any conflicts from happening, UN peacekeepers will be placed in the borders. After the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights, the civilians who were displaced will return to their homes. For the oil reserves in the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt will reimburse Israel for the money that was invested in improving the reserves since 1967. As a part of the Non-Aggression Pact, Egypt will not close any trade routes to Israel. In conclusion, neither side will enact any measures that negatively affect the other sides. If either side breaks one of the clauses of the agreement, they will face sanctions implemented by the United Nations. To provide transparency, the agreement will be revised every 10 years by Israel, Egypt, and Syria. The superpower nations, USA and USSR, came to make an agreement in order to de-escalate the tensions and compensate for the concerns written in the previous section. This agreement aimed to avoid Egypt and Syria from going to conflict encouraged by the aforementioned nations. The agreement was to implement it indefinitely unless the contract was breached by either side. The essential step of the agreement was the reaction of the military weapons by both superpowers to have prevented seizing the stability of the borders. For the sake of transparency, independent peacekeepers are located in the borders to observe the situation and report about the conditions of the Sinai Peninsula and Golan Heights.
The Arab Alliance and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, have formally agreed to strengthen their partnership in order to secure regional stability and mutual prosperity. Under this agreement, the USSR commits to providing the Arab states with political and economic support aimed at reinforcing their sovereignty and reconstruction efforts following recent conflicts. The agreement between the Arab Alliance and the USSR states that the USSR will be helping the Arab states both politically and economically. In return, the Arab Alliance will supply the USSR with oil and related energy resources at preferential discount of 15%, ensuring a stable flow of strategic commodities to the Soviet markets. Both parties have also pledged to coordinate closely on issues of regional security, intelligence sharing, and infrastructure development. This cooperation seeks to reduce external interference in Arab affairs, bolster economic self-sufficiency, and promote a balanced relationship between the superpowers and the Arab world. The agreement is intended to remain ineffective indefinitely, subject to periodic reviews to ensure transparency and mutual benefits. The Arab Alliance, the People's Republic of China, and the non-aligned movements have came together in order to propose a friendly agreement to pursue joint economic and humanitarian initiatives to support recovery and development in Arab states affected by conflict. The Arab Alliance and the People's Republic of China have stated the importance of the presence of the non-aligned movements in any agreements or conferences by recommending a Middle East Peace Conference hosted by non-aligned nations. The stated nations demand reform of the United Nations peace process, including limiting veto power in conflict-related resolutions at the United Nations, aim to solve injustice, ensuring equal representation of non-aligned nations in order to prevent superpower intervention, as well as the usage of Cold War politics, holding violations of international law accountable. The Arab Alliance, USSR, the People's Republic of China, and non-aligned movements agreed on the non-recognition of Israel until the official recognition of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Thank you.